Okay, here we go. Lesson number 4. This is Matt from drawingtutorialsonline.com. What is lesson 4 all about? Well, I find that it's extremely important to draw the hardest part first in a lot of cases. In this particular case, I wouldn't call it hard, but I would call it tedious. We're going to try to draw the eye within the eye socket to get that out of the way. And once you draw the hardest part first, then you get that confidence and you can move around to the rest of the drawing and refine some other shapes so you're not working in that vacuum and you're not getting stuck with one little small area. Okay, let's jump into it. Refining the features now of this eye area. I sped this video up about 30%. It's quiet right now. It's a miracle. It's have to take advantage of this quiet time to record audio. Now you want to commit a little bit more and you want to press down a little bit harder. Separate that brow, the eyebrow, from the skin ever so slightly. All the values are very similar in that area. Get the roundness and the angle of the iris and look at the distance from the iris to the bridge of the nose. Let's press down a little bit more and commit now to the edge of the eyelid. Let's kick out that lash, and right now we're just trying to treat it as a shape. You can see my head moving. Every time it moves, I'm looking. Let's get rid of that white in there. We need to make a solid tone. Just very light pressure on the pencil. Don't go in for the kill and try to get the darkest darks immediately. Now, there is the dark of the eye and then the white of the eyelid ledge, the lower eyelid ledge. It's a little darker over here as well. You want to think of that eye as a big ball. And right now, I could curve a couple things a little bit more. I could push the lower eyelid on more of an angle. Don't destroy the light. Keep the light light. Keep your darks dark. There's actually modeling factors on the lower eyelid. There's a highlight, light, halftone, dark, halftone, reflected light, accent, cast shadow. It's pretty cool. I need to get the angle though. Right now, it's that awkward stage. You got to just hang in there. The reflected light is too light. You see it on the lower eyelid? Let's just use a short circular stroke to knock down the value. Let's get rid of that reflected light just a little bit more. Angle of that. Now let's just make it a little bit darker. So you see, we could commit a little bit more now because we have the overall shape. We're just refining shapes and adding more tone. Getting rid of white paper. Curve the iris. It's a round ball. Keep it soft in there. When you have an eye like this in the shadow, it's going to be soft. If it was in the light, you'd be using crisper edges. Let's just refine and make everything soft. Soft equals realism. Hard edges equal style. Now, that's a little bit of an angle the other side of the brow. It's kind of making a V shape. It's hard to see, but it's there. It's weird when you really analyze the photo. This model is such a great model. I didn't realize. I'm so glad that I met him. Wrap these folds. See, he's lifting his eyebrow up. He's looking up. That immediately creates some folds in your forehead, some wrinkles in your forehead. So you want to get those in, but when you draw them, don't draw them as a pure straight line. Have them wrap around the roundness of the forehead. Little bit more solid with the brow, but not dark. So when you're drawing that eyebrow, you don't want to make it too dark where it's in the light. The eyebrow should change values as it goes from the shadow to the light. Okay, there we go. Am I going to push that angle in there? Come on, Matt, you can do it. Yes, I angled that just a little bit more. We want to make it rounder. Okay, we're getting there. 2020 hindsight is always easier, right? This is such a cool part of his cheekbone area. Curve those lines around, those initial shading lines. Try to curve them. It will act as a nice foundation for your drawing to show more three-dimension. That needs to be lifted up, and I need to curve where the eye sits on the cheekbone. We're trying to match the values there. That's a light area of that lower lid. Let's do it some more. If you don't press down so hard in the beginning, it'll be much easier to erase out some of the darker values. See how I'm shading around the form? This is the beginning stages of putting in some surface planes on the face. Keep asking yourself the question, where is the lightest light? Also, when you're looking at his face, all of those subtle values, that's where you want to just, when you have free time, just practice pressing down extremely lightly on your pencil. See how I'm holding the pencil and I'm pressing down very lightly? That's not an easy thing to do. That's something that you want to practice. Yes, the Kohler erase is very forgiving with this scenario. If you're using like a 2B graphite, it's not that forgiving. You just press down a little bit harder and then you've got like all this dark on your paper. But it's a good skill to have, to be able to have a nice soft touch and to turn on the jets and press down hard when you have to do that. Let's just refine this upper lip, make it a little bit thicker. Let's get rid of some of the white paper. Chisel it out. Look at the angle of that shape, the distance of that shape to the front of the lips. Curve around, curve around. So you see I have a little bit of a reflected light underneath the lower eyelid, a little bit of a reflected light underneath the lower lip, and there's a little bit of a reflected light under the nose as well. Leave some of that reflected light, but don't have it as light as light. What the reflected light does is it allows you to keep those shadow shapes from getting too heavy and too dark. And you have to make a decision as to whether or not you want to match the values perfectly. In some cases, I want to do that, but in other cases, I want to have my shadow shapes a little bit lighter with a reflected light to keep them a little bit more light and airy, and that also enables the drawing to have more of a translucent feel to it in the shadows. Just looking, sharpening the pencil. Be solid with this. Squint. Don't merge those shadow values into the light. When you study the photo, you see different gradations in the shadow. Those are just separations in muscles. Got to be careful I don't go too dark with that line. This area, I don't think I got the likeness 100% near that hair / cast shadow, but it's all good. We're still pretty early on in this drawing. More solid. Solid is the key to a dimensional head, and solid shadow shapes are the key to getting a likeness. Excellent. Just want to reestablish where the ear ends and where the hair starts. I think my ear might be a little too small. Don't get stuck in one area. Just keep moving around. It's like almost being on a merry-go-round or a Ferris wheel is a good way to think about it. You're just on the top of the Ferris wheel, the side, the bottom, the other side, and you're constantly working around the drawing. If you get stuck at the top of the Ferris wheel, there's going to be a problem. So we're at about 3 5/8 wide by 3.5 tall. Again, that size is a good size for this type of drawing. It's not too small. It's not too big. It's too small for putting too many more details in this eye area, but this is a good size. I like to work this size. If I wanted to work on a portrait that was much more detailed, it'd be bigger. The head would be like 6 inches wide, but I've never, I shouldn't say that. I worked life size when I was in college, but I think working life size is just not for me. You could like to work life size, and the benefit of working life size is that when you photograph your artwork and it zooms down on your website, your portfolio, it looks really, really good. Sometimes, like this is a small drawing, 8 inches by 8 inches, and so I have to be very careful when I photograph it that I don't enlarge it too much, because then it's going to have a whole different look and feel to it. Just trying to place that jaw. The jaw should have a little bit of a reflected light that you're not necessarily seeing in that photo on the computer screen right now, but it's there if you really study the photo. I printed this photo out on a Canon paper. It's a semi-gloss paper. It's Photo Paper Plus semi-gloss. It's a really good paper. One more value darker. Starting to think about the reflected light. A little bit more refinement with this shape and its matching of the value. Remember what I said, I believe it was in lesson 2. When you draw these shapes, the bad thing about drawing shapes like this is they look more like a graphic design. So you have to curve eventually the shapes around the form being the sternomastoid muscle and the form being the Adam's apple area. See, I'm holding the pencil a little differently there just to block in that very light tone. Let's go back to the ear and refine these shapes within the ear. Make sure we have the correct ear placement. So when you're working on that little shape, what's right up above it? Is the eye above it, or is the eye to the right? Don't work in a vacuum. Keep comparing shapes to other shapes and distances between these shapes. Very sharp pencil here. This is quite small. There's a little bit of translucency within that shadow shape, and the way that you show translucency with the pencil is by not pressing down too hard. Look a lot. These are all little shadows and cast shadows and side planes and lots of little cylinders that you're trying to show within the ear. There's some modeling factors on this edge of the ear. It's just a cylinder that you're drawing. Try to break it down to its most primitive shape, its most primitive form. Wrap the shadow shapes around the form. There's so many cylinders on that ear, it's not funny. Good. Now leave it alone and move on to somewhere else. Look at the distance from the top of the ear to the edge of the hair. We can block in a little bit more tone now. Make that hair one value more solid. Pencil stroke direction, keep it fresh. Have that pencil stroke be a little bit more harsh on the hair versus the skin. All right, we're just about done here with lesson number 4. Remember what I said in the introduction? If you're short on time, watch from lesson 1 to 4 or lesson 1 to 5, and then go watch lesson 12. Thank you so much for watching lesson number 4. I hope that you learned something from that lesson. If you'd like to learn more about what drawingtutorialsonline.com has to offer you, please check out some of the links in the description below. Also, definitely don't forget to subscribe to the channel. I'm going to be uploading more and more of these portrait drawing tutorials as the weeks progress. Just getting back to old school filming of the drawing tutorials. I'll talk to you soon. Thanks a lot for watching.